The sound of a rifle shot cracked through the clear Montana sky, startling a flock of birds into flight as Rebecca Blackwood steadied her shaking hands on the weapon. The stagecoach robbery had happened so fast one moment she'd been traveling west to claim her inheritance. The next she was standing over an unconscious driver while 3 masked men fled with everything she owned, including the deed to her late uncle's ranch. "Miss, are you all right?" The deep voice came from behind her, causing Rebecca to whirl around, rifle still raised. A tall man astride a chestnut stallion approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. His weather-beaten Stetson shadowed piercing blue eyes that assessed her situation quickly. "They've taken everything," she managed, lowering the rifle as exhaustion washed over her. 3 days of travel from Boston had culminated in this disaster. Her fashionable traveling outfit was torn and dusty, her carefully pinned hair coming loose in the wind. "The driver needs help." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing the lean, muscular build of a man who worked outdoors. "Name's Jack Westland. I've got a ranch about 5 miles east. Let's get him tended to, then we can talk about those robbers." By nightfall, Rebecca found herself seated at her rough-hewn table in Jack Westland's modest ranch house. The stagecoach driver had been settled in a spare room with a minor head wound, and Jack's ranch hand had ridden to town to alert the sheriff. "So you're Horace Blackwood's niece," Jack said, sliding a steaming mug of coffee toward her. Everyone wondered who'd inherit the lazy bee when he passed. Rebecca wrapped her fingers around the warm mug. "I hadn't seen Uncle Horace since I was a child." The letter from his solicitor came as quite a surprise. She sighed. "Not that it matters now. The deed was in my valise along with every cent I had." Jack leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Those men were likely Harmon's boys. They've been causing trouble since your uncle refused to sell his water rights." His expression softened. "The deed being stolen doesn't change your claim. Town records will show you're the rightful owner." "What good is owning a ranch I know nothing about running?" Rebecca asked bitterly. "I'm a schoolteacher from Boston. I came west because I had nothing left there after my parents died. I thought perhaps I could sell the property and start fresh somewhere." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "That land's been in your family for 30 years. Your uncle built it from nothing." He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the darkening plains. "Harmon wants it because it controls the water access for half the valley. If he gets it, a dozen small ranchers will be forced to sell out to him." Rebecca felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "I still don't see what I can do. I have no experience with ranching, no money to hire help." "I could show you," Jack said suddenly, turning back to her. "Your uncle was a good man. He helped me get started when I first came here with nothing but the clothes on my back and dreams bigger than my pockets." Their eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between them. Rebecca felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with her current predicament. "Why would you help me?" she asked quietly. "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply, "and because I've seen too many good people pushed out by men like Harmon." Rebecca slept fitfully that night, her dreams filled with masked bandits and the piercing blue eyes of a rancher she'd just met. By morning, her resolve had hardened. When Jack found her at the breakfast table, she met his gaze with determination. "I want to see my ranch," she declared. They rode out as dawn broke over the eastern horizon, painting the Montana landscape in hues of gold and amber. Rebecca, now dressed in borrowed clothes that were far too large for her slender frame, clung to the saddle horn as her mount followed Jack's horse along a winding trail. "There it is," Jack said eventually, reining his horse to a stop atop a rise. "The lazy bee." Rebecca caught her breath. Below them stretched a valley cradled by gentle slopes, a creek wound through lush pastures where cattle grazed peacefully. A modest house and barn stood near a copse of cottonwoods, thin wisps of smoke rising from the chimney. "Someone's there," she said with alarm. Jack nodded. "That'll be Miguel. He worked for your uncle for 20 years, Probably doesn't know about Horace's passing yet. As they approached the ranch house, an elderly Mexican man emerged, rifle in hand. Recognition dawned on his weathered face when he saw Jack, but his expression turned to confusion at the sight of Rebecca. "Miguel, this is Rebecca Blackwood, Horace's niece from back east," Jack explained as they dismounted. "Miss Blackwood, this is Miguel Sanchez, the most loyal ranch hand in the territory." Miguel's eyes widened. "The little Niña he spoke of, but he said you would never come west." "I had little choice," Rebecca replied softly. "Uncle Horace left me the ranch in his will." The older man's eyes filled with tears. "Señor Horace, he is gone then, I feared when he did not return from town." He crossed himself, then straightened his shoulders. "The ranch, it needs much work. Without the boss these past weeks, things are falling behind." Rebecca surveyed the property with new eyes. Though beautiful, she could see signs of neglect, broken fence posts, an unrepaired section of roof on the barn, untended garden plots. "I know nothing about ranching," she admitted. "But I'm willing to learn." Jack exchanged glances with Miguel. "It's hard work, Miss Blackwood, especially with spring roundup coming. Without hands, you won't manage." "I'll work forever if I have to," she said fiercely, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "This is all I have left in the world." A slow smile spread across Jack's face, transforming his rugged features. "Forever's a long time to work alone," he said softly. "Might be easier to work beside someone who knows the land." Inside the ranch house, Rebecca discovered touches of home that made her eyes sting with tears. A faded daguerreotype of her mother as a young woman sat on the mantel. Books filled shelves along one wall. Her uncle, it seemed, had been a reader like herself. Miguel prepared a simple meal while Rebecca explored. In her uncle's desk, she found the ranch ledger, stomach sinking as she examined the figures. The lazy bee was barely staying afloat. Without capital for spring expenses, she'd be forced to sell regardless of her wishes. Bad news. Jack asked, finding her hunched over the books. Rebecca didn't bother hiding her distress. "I need to hire hands for the roundup, repair buildings, buy supplies, and there's barely enough to feed the existing stock through spring." Jack pulled up a chair beside her. "Your uncle was land rich but cash poor. It's the way of things out here." He tapped the ledger. "But you've got about 50 head ready for market. With beef prices up in Billings, that could see you through to fall." "If I can get them to market," Rebecca pointed out. "I could help," Jack offered. "My boys and I could ride with your herd. Safety in numbers." Their shoulders brushed as they bent over the ledger together, and Rebecca became acutely aware of his closeness, the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, turning to find his face inches from hers. His eyes held her steadily. "I told you, your uncle helped me once." "There's more to it than that," she pressed. After a long moment, Jack sighed. "Harmon's been trying to buy me out too. If he gets your water rights, I'll be next." "But that's not." He ran a hand through his hair. "There's something about you, Miss Blackwood, something that makes a man want to stand beside you, not watch you fail." The moment stretched between them, electric with possibilities neither dared voice. Then Miguel entered with coffee and the spell was broken. That night, after Jack had returned to his own ranch promising to come back in the morning, Rebecca sat on the porch watching stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. Miguel approached, offering a shawl against the evening chill. "Señor Jack, he is a good man," the older man said, settling into a chair beside her. "One of the few your uncle trusted completely?" "Tell me about my uncle," Rebecca said softly. "I barely remember him from his visits when I was a child." Miguel's stories painted a picture of a hard-working, principled man who had fought drought, blizzards, and cattle thieves to build his ranch. Who had taken in a young, penniless Jack Westland 10 years ago, teaching him ranching and eventually helping him purchase his own small spread. "Your uncle, he had no son," Miguel concluded. "But Jack, he became like a son in many ways." In the days that followed, Rebecca threw herself into learning everything she could about running the ranch. Jack arrived each morning at dawn, teaching her to ride properly, to mend fences, to recognize the signs of illness in cattle. Miguel showed her how to work the cook stove, where the root cellar was stocked, which herbs grew wild on the property. Each evening, exhausted and aching from unaccustomed labor, she would join the men for simple meals, listening to their stories of the territory, absorbing knowledge of weather patterns, cattle breeds, and local politics. She learned of the growing tension between large ranchers like Harmon and smaller operators being squeezed out. A week into her education, the sheriff rode out from town with news. "Found your belongings scattered along Eagle Creek," he told Rebecca. "Empty valise, some torn clothing. No sign of the money or deed." "What about the men?" Jack asked, standing protectively close to Rebecca. The sheriff shook his head. "No sign, likely headed for the border by now." He tipped his hat to Rebecca. "Town records confirm your inheritance, Miss Blackwood. Judge Wilson says he can issue a new deed when you come to town." After the sheriff departed, Rebecca stood motionless in the yard, conflicting emotions washing over her. Relief at having her claim confirmed warred with frustration at the continued financial strain. "We'll manage," Jack said quietly, coming to stand beside her. The we wasn't lost on Rebecca. Somewhere in the past week, her problems had become their problems. Jack's steady presence had become something she counted on, looked forward to. She stole a glance at his profile, wondering when the rancher had become so important to her peace of mind. Spring bloomed across the valley, bringing with it the frenetic activity of calving season. Rebecca's days blurred into an endless cycle of checking pregnant cows, assisting with difficult births, bottle-feeding orphaned calves. Jack brought two of his hands to help, working from first light until well after dark. One evening, as they sat exhausted on the porch steps watching the sun sink behind distant mountains, Rebecca realized something had fundamentally changed within her. The land that had seemed so foreign now felt like home. The work that had intimidated her now gave her satisfaction. "I never thought I could love it here," she admitted, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Jack turned to her, his face softened in the golden light. "It gets in your blood," he said. "My father was a factory worker in Pennsylvania. I came west looking for adventure, but I found purpose instead." Their hands rested inches apart on the wooden step. Slowly, hesitantly, Jack covered her smaller hand with his. The gesture was gentle, a question more than a claim. Rebecca turned her palm upward, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'm glad I stayed," she whispered. "So am I," he answered, voice rough with emotion. The following day brought unwelcome visitors. Rebecca was in the barn mixing milk for an orphaned calf when she heard horses approaching. Stepping into the yard, she found herself facing three riders, the central figure a corpulent man with a florid face partially hidden by an immaculately groomed beard. "Miss Blackwood, I presume?" he called, removing his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Wesley Harmon, at your service." Rebecca straightened her spine, conscious of her work-stained dress and disheveled hair. "Mr. Harmon, what brings you to the Lazy Bee?" The man dismounted with surprising agility for his size. "Neighborly visit, wanted to pay my respects to Horace's heir." His small eyes assessed her shrewdly. "Must be quite a change from city life." "I'm adjusting," she replied coolly, disliking him on instinct. Harmon gestured expansively. "Beautiful land. Shame to see it struggling. I'd like to make you an offer, a generous one, enough to set you up comfortably anywhere you'd like to go." "The Lazy Bee isn't for sale," Rebecca stated firmly. Harmon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Come now, Miss Blackwood, be reasonable. A woman alone can't manage a spread this size. You're already behind on the spring work. By fall, you'll be desperate." Rebecca felt a flare of anger. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm not alone. I have good help." "Westland." Harmon spat the name like a curse. "That upstart won't save you. He's barely keeping his own place afloat." The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted the tense conversation. Jack rode into the yard, his expression darkening at the sight of Harmon. He dismounted and moved to stand beside Rebecca, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Harmon," he acknowledged coldly. Didn't expect to see you slumming on a small spread like this. The larger man's face flushed with anger. Just offering Miss Blackwood a business proposition, though I suspect you've been filling her head with reasons to refuse. Miss Blackwood makes her own decisions, Jack replied evenly. Harmon's eyes narrowed as they flicked between Jack and Rebecca, noting their proximity. I see how it is, he said softly. Well, my offer stands for now, but land values change, Miss Blackwood, sometimes quite rapidly. He remounted his horse. Think carefully about your future. As the men rode away, Rebecca released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He's threatened by you, she observed. Jack's jaw tightened. By us, he corrected. Small ranchers working together rather than selling out. He turned to face her fully. Rebecca, there's something you should know. I think Harmon may have been behind the robbery. What? Why? The timing's too convenient. Horace dies, you arrive to claim the ranch and immediately lose the deed and funds to keep it running. Jack's expression was grim. Harmon wants this land badly. He's not above hiring men to do his dirty work. Rebecca felt cold despite the warm spring day. We can't prove it. No, Jack agreed, but we can make sure he doesn't get what he wants. That night, sleep eluded Rebecca. She paced the small house, mind racing with worry about Harmon's thinly veiled threats and the ranch's precarious finances. Near midnight, unable to contain her restlessness, she slipped outside. The moon illuminated the valley in silver light, casting long shadows from the cottonwoods. Rebecca walked toward the creek, drawn by the sound of rushing water. She was startled to find Jack there, seated on a boulder, staring into the current. Couldn't sleep either, she asked softly. He turned, not surprised by her presence. Too much on my mind. He shifted over, making space for her on the large rock. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes, shoulders touching, watching the moonlight dance on rippling water. I keep wondering if I'm doing the right thing, Rebecca finally confessed. Maybe I should sell, go somewhere easier. Jack's hand found hers in the darkness. Is that what you want? No, she admitted. I thought I would hate it here, that I'd be counting the days until I could leave. She turned to him, moonlight silvering her features. But now I can't imagine being anywhere else. His fingers tightened around hers. When I first met you, I thought you'd run back east at the first sign of trouble. I've never been happier to be wrong about someone. I'm still afraid, she whispered. Afraid I'll fail, that Harmon will win. Jack turned to face her fully. Rebecca, he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. The promise in his words made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Jack leaned forward. Their lips met in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened with shared longing. His hand came up to cradle her face, calloused fingers gentle against her skin. When they finally parted, Rebecca rested her forehead against his. I never expected you, she whispered. Jack's thumb traced the curve of her cheek. From the moment I saw you standing over that stagecoach with that rifle, something in me recognized something in you. The following weeks brought the challenge of spring roundup. Jack brought his men to join forces with the few hands Rebecca had managed to hire. Together they worked from dawn until dusk, gathering scattered cattle, branding calves, preparing the herd for the drive to market. Rebecca insisted on participating fully despite Jack's initial concerns. She learned to use a lariat to cut strays from the herd, to hold her own during the exhausting days. Her fair skin burned then tanned, her hands developed calluses and muscles she never knew she had strengthened with daily use. Evenings around the campfire brought a different kind of education. She listened to the cowboys' stories, learned their songs, came to understand the unwritten code that governed life in the territory. And through it all, Jack was beside her, his quiet strength a constant she came to rely on. The night before they were to begin the cattle drive to Billings, Jack found Rebecca checking supplies one final time. Everything's ready, he assured her. You should get some rest. I'm too nervous to sleep, she admitted. Everything depends on this drive. Jack took her hands in his, stilling their restless movement. "Rebecca, there's something I need to ask you, something I've been thinking about for weeks now." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "What is it?" "This drive will get you through to fall, but what then?" "Ranching's a hard life of constant work and worry." "I told you I'll work forever if necessary," she said firmly. Jack's eyes held hers intently. "I was thinking, it might be easier if we combined our efforts more permanently." Rebecca's breath caught. "What are you suggesting?" "Our ranches adjoin. Together, we'd have enough land, enough water, enough stock to stand against Harmon and his kind." His voice softened. "And I find I don't much like the thought of working my land alone anymore, not when I could be working beside you." Hope bloomed in Rebecca's chest, but she needed to be certain. "Is this a business proposition, Mr. Westland?" A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "No, Miss Blackwood, though it makes good business sense." He stepped closer, one hand rising to cradle her cheek. "This is me asking if you might consider becoming my wife. Jack, I know it's sudden," he continued quickly. "We've only known each other a short time, but out here you learn to recognize what matters. And you, Rebecca Blackwood, matter to me more than anything ever has." Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes. "I feel as though I've been waiting my whole life to find this place, to find you." "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their kiss sealed the promise, tender yet passionate, full of shared dreams for the future. The cattle drive began at dawn the next day. 20 cowboys, including Jack and Rebecca, pushed nearly 500 head of cattle northward toward the railhead at Billings. The work was dusty and exhausting, the pace necessarily slow to keep the cattle from losing weight on the journey. Rebecca rode drag position with Miguel, eating dust at the back of the herd but learning invaluable lessons from the experienced ranch hand. Each night, bone-weary, she would collapse by the campfire, often falling asleep against Jack's shoulder before finishing her coffee. They were 3 days into the journey when trouble found them. Rebecca was riding the flank of the herd when shots rang out from a nearby ridge. Cattle began to scatter in panic as masked riders drove into the herd from multiple directions. "Rustlers!" came the shout from one of Jack's men. Rebecca wheeled her horse around, looking desperately for Jack. She spotted him racing toward the front of the herd where the majority of the attackers were concentrated. Without hesitation, she spurred her mount after him. Chaos engulfed the drive as cowboys scrambled to control frightened cattle while fending off the rustlers. Rebecca reached Jack's side just as he exchanged gunfire with a masked man. "Get to cover," Jack shouted when he saw her. "I'm not leaving you," she called back, drawing the small revolver he'd insisted she carry. More shots rang out. One of the rustlers fell from his saddle. Another broke away, leading a group of cattle down a draw. Jack and 2 of his men gave chase while Rebecca and Miguel fought to keep the main herd from scattering completely. The skirmish lasted less than 20 minutes, but to Rebecca, it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, she looked around frantically for Jack. Relief flooded her when she saw him riding back, dusty but unharmed. "We got most of them back," he reported, dismounting beside her. "Lost maybe 30 head, could have been much worse." Miguel approached, leading a horse with a bound man slumped across the saddle. "This one will talk," he said grimly. "I recognized him works for Harmon." Jack's expression hardened. "I suspected as much." The rustler was handed over to a marshal they encountered the following day. His confession implicated Harmon in both the rustling attempt and the stagecoach robbery that had stolen Rebecca's funds and deed. While it wasn't enough to arrest the powerful rancher, it was sufficient to damage his standing in the territory. The remainder of the drive proceeded without incident. When they finally reached Billings, Rebecca watched with satisfaction as their cattle fetched top dollar at auction enough to secure the lazy BTK's future through winter and beyond. On their last night in town, Jack took Rebecca to dinner at the finest hotel. She wore a new dress purchased that afternoon, her first non-work attire since arriving in Montana. "You look beautiful," Jack said. eyes appreciative as she joined him in the hotel lobby. "I'd almost forgotten what it feels like to wear something besides denim and cotton work clothes," she laughed. Over dinner, they discussed plans for their joined ranches. With the rustlers identified and Harmon's reputation tarnished, the immediate threat had passed, but both knew the struggle between large and small ranchers would continue. "Together, we have a fighting chance," Jack said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Not just against Harmon, but against whatever else comes: drought, hard winters, market downturns." Rebecca smiled, squeezing his fingers. "I came west expecting to sell my inheritance and start a new life elsewhere. I never imagined the new life would be here with you." Later that night, as they walked beneath a canopy of stars brighter than any Rebecca had ever seen in Boston, Jack stopped and turned to face her. "When we get back, I'd like to make it official," he said. "No need for a long engagement unless you want one." Rebecca smiled up at him. "I've never been one for waiting once my mind is made up." "Is your mind made up about me, Rebecca Blackwood?" he asked, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "Completely," she answered without hesitation. "I've found my home, Jack. It's not just the land, it's you." 3 weeks later, Rebecca stood in her uncle's, now her house, wearing her mother's wedding dress that Miguel's wife had skillfully altered. Through the window, she could see neighbors and friends gathering in the yard where an arbor of fresh-cut branches had been erected. A knock at the door revealed Miguel, dressed in his Sunday best. "It is time, Señorita Rebecca." She took his offered arm. "Thank you for everything, Miguel, for helping me learn to love this place as my uncle did." The older man's eyes shone with emotion. "Señor Horace, he would be proud of you, of the union of these two ranches." He patted her hand. "Of the love you have found." Outside, beneath the brilliant blue Montana sky, Jack waited. His usually weathered face was freshly shaved, his normally wild hair tamed. But his eyes were the same, clear and honest, lighting up as they fell upon her. The ceremony was simple, but heartfelt. They exchanged vows before the circuit riding preacher, promising to stand together through all of life's challenges. When Jack slipped his mother's ring onto Rebecca's finger, his hands were steady but his voice shook with emotion. "I take you as my wife to work beside me all our days," he promised. As the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Rebecca felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The journey that had begun with loss and uncertainty had led her to this moment, to this man, who had shown her the beauty in hard work and perseverance, who had taught her that forever wasn't so daunting when you didn't face it alone. The celebration lasted well into the night, with dancing and feasting under lantern light. As the party continued around them, Jack led Rebecca away from the crowd, toward the creek where they had first kissed. "Happy, Mrs. Westland?" he asked, drawing her into his arms. "Beyond measure," she answered truthfully. "Though I'm already thinking about all the work waiting for us tomorrow," Jack laughed, the sound warm in the night air. "When I first met you, you said you'd work forever. Remember what I answered?" Rebecca smiled up at him. "You said it might be easier to work beside someone who knows the land." His arms tightened around her. "I think I knew even then that I wanted that someone to be you." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Forever's a long time, Rebecca." "Not long enough when I'm with you," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss her husband beneath the vast Montana sky that had become her home. 5 years later, Rebecca stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house, watching as Jack taught their 4-year-old son to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter clung to Rebecca's skirts, eyes wide with excitement as she watched her brother. The combined Westland Blackwood ranch had prospered. Hard work and smart management had expanded their herds and their reputation. Where Harmon had once threatened to destroy them, he now grudgingly dealt with them as equals in regional ranching associations. As Jack lifted their son from the pony and swung him high in the air, eliciting delighted squeals, Rebecca felt a familiar wave of gratitude. The journey west that had begun in desperation had led to a life richer than anything she could have imagined in Boston. "Mama, look!" her daughter cried, pointing to a rider approaching in the distance. Rebecca shaded her eyes, recognizing Miguel returning from town with the mail. Jack set their son down and came to join her on the porch, one arm slipping naturally around her waist. "Good news," he called as Miguel dismounted. The old ranch hand smiled broadly. "The best, Jeef. The railroad contract is confirmed. They want all the beef we can provide for the workers." Jack's whoop of joy startled a nearby chicken. He swept Rebecca into an embrace, spinning her around on the porch. "We did it. This will secure our future for years to come." Rebecca laughed, clinging to her husband's shoulders. "Our future was secure the moment you asked me to work beside you." Later that night, with their children asleep and the ranch quiet under a blanket of stars, Rebecca and Jack sat on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. "Did I ever thank you?" she asked suddenly. "For what?" "For finding me that day by the stagecoach. For believing I could do this when I wasn't sure myself." Jack pressed a kiss to her temple. "You proved me right every day since." Rebecca snuggled closer against his side. "I used to dream of adventure when I was teaching in Boston. I never imagined it would look like this, like fence posts and calving season and cattle drives." "Regrets?" he asked, the question light but a hint of vulnerability beneath it. "Not one," she answered honestly. "I found everything I never knew I was looking for." She turned her face up to his. "I found you." His kiss was as tender as the first they had shared by the creek, yet deepened by years of partnership, of shared struggles and triumphs, of a love that had only grown stronger through working side by side. The Montana night wrapped around them, the vast sky ablaze with stars, as Rebecca Westland thanked whatever twist of fate had brought her west to this land, to this life, to this man who had taught her that forever wasn't a sentence but a promise.